Okay, I think we better get started. Some of you would like to get home for dinner or lunch. My name is Joe Tierney, and I've written that little message at the bottom there that it's a personal memoir. It's not a history of the parish. I can't do that. I don't really know how to do that. It's interesting. If you'd been standing over there 60-something years ago, in the exact same spot we were, my father would have come out and moved you on because you were trespassing. You're on our property. Okay. I thought, just to get you going, I had a different setup at home where I set the slides up. So I had planned to go back and forth because I need to show one or two slides twice, but I won't do that now because in case the technology messes up, I can't go back. Now, that's just a little bit of a help there, thanks to Google, to let you know what we're talking about. The church is here, so this is number 88.
Sorry, I'm coming down.
This is number 88 here. Right, and you can see how extended out here. This is as far as the border went, okay? And our house was actually on this property here. And we have a little gate there that allowed me to go out on the Beaconsfield Street and back into the church there, or back into and also the entrance of the school. In those days you couldn't go straight across. You had to go in via Beaconsfield Street, etc. Now just a quick test of your memory. Next to 88 we have number 90. What was number 90? The butcher shop, Bob Clark's butcher shop, number 90. Number 92. I was hoping somebody could tell me number 92. Because what happened, there were two other shops there. You had Short's Hardware and you had Turner's Greengrocer. And then when everything changed and our shop business moved up to number 94. Because the church took over the property. These two businesses went across the road.
That's right.
You'll find them on the other side of the street, yeah. Okay, of course here... Sorry?
The butcher shop's still open?
No,
not
cool.
now.
No.
A long time
Bob Clark, his job went, the butcher shop went, and he joined Reesby Workers Club and he worked in a bar. Okay, now right in the corner here you had the PMG. Anyone remember that?
Yeah.
Which became
Pigs Must Run.
Pigs Must Run. Telstra, the great company we love today. On the corner here we had
Pizza.
Yeah.
we had a grocery store run by Spears. Now Spears were not Catholics, they were the other mob. And they used to listen to my strange Irish accent when I'd come in and order some sliced ham from them. Okay, now down here at one stage there was a Chinese takeaway, the first in the whole of Reesby I think. You had also a Boucher's chemist shop, pharmacy, Boucher. There was there was a barber shop. The husband was Russian and the wife was Ukrainian.
Oh, can you imagine
Think of that. And they appeared on television on a program called The Marriage Game. Do you remember that?
Oh no.
The Marriage Game, a very popular game in the 60s. And what happened, a couple would come out, they'd be interviewed separately on TV, and you'd ask the husband all these questions about the wife. What's your wife's favourite colour? And he'd say pink, and she'd say, no, you know nothing about me. It was me.
Garage.
So, okay, so that was a very interesting thing. They were good ladies. And the other end of those, you had, the other side of those, you had Shorts and you had Turner's, the greengrocer, right? So the other little thing is, I'm not sure whether the bus stop was originally down here. I can't remember exactly. But what we had here was a mixed business. News agency, we sold wool, we sold gifts, tobacco, soft drinks, and particularly lollies for the kids. So they'd get off the bus, into our shop for their supply of lollies for the day, and then straight to school. That's how we made our living, etc. We also had lottery tickets, sold lottery tickets. Yeah? And can you remember lottery tickets in those days?
The Opera House ones too.
What was the lowest prize you could win? What was the lowest one? £5,000.
Pounds.
Remember that?
No.
No, you don't. Okay, £5,000 was before dollars and cents.
There's the Opera House in Bradford.
I
remember when it came in.
It was just an ordinary lottery ticket.
Where's the Opera House like?
Oh, that was much later.
That was the pay. That was the pay. That was in '74.
You're a different level, lethal.
Was it the hospital? Isn't it? So the
Anyway.
tickets to fund the hospital.
The Children's Hospital there was one.
The ordinary one, I'm not sure. The ordinary was worth £5,000.
Camperdown.
And guess what? One of the tickets we sold won the ordinary lottery prize. It was won by a painter, house painter, not Picasso, a house painter living in Reersby. His name was Swan. He won £5,000 and he retired on the spot. He never painted another house again. So you could live off £5,000 for the rest of your life. That would be a good weekend at the moment in Sydney. £5,000. So all that's very interesting. That's just all the background there. Okay, so the other little thing is, because we had all these little goods, we were selling all these goods, milk and things like that. If you didn't buy those things from us, you had to go down to Marco Avenue, at Selms Parade. Yeah? So that means we got to know all the neighbours, Catholic and non-Catholic, etc. Yeah. Okay, so that made it very interesting for us, particularly different times of the year. Okay. Now, in your family album, do you have a photograph like this? Do you have something like that? Okay, you all flew in on planes. We didn't. We came on a boat which took 6 weeks from Southampton. Except we were called £10 Poms. Remember that? £10 Poms. But we didn't like them because we weren't Poms. The Poms were the enemy. It's because of the Poms that we had to get on the boat and come out here, if you know any history at all. Okay, now very quickly I'll just go through who they are because they figure in the story that I'd like to tell you. There's my Uncle Patrick, and he ran that little mixed business that we ran. He ran that before we arrived. He was there behind the till with the customers, and his wife is here, May McGrath.
So how long was he here before everyone came
Probably
out?
not very long. Probably not very long. Probably about 6 months or 9 months. So I don't know about before that. That's ancient history. Okay. The other ones, I think it's worth saying a few things about that. That's myself, my sister. You can see the resemblance. I've changed hats, but I'm basically the same type of person. Now, a couple of things about my parents, my father and my mother. My parents were married during the Blitz in London. Remember the Blitz? The Blitz in London. Yes, they were married in the... Remember the Blitz? Oh my goodness. They were married in the Blitz in a place called Enfield, a Catholic church in Enfield, North London. Okay, in the middle of the Blitz, the bombs were raining down. They got married. 3 days later, the church was destroyed in a bomb. Yeah? They were the last couple to be married in that church. And it was a wonderfully auspicious start to a marriage. You walk down the aisle and the church has just been burned. Just go to Australia, probably was thinking. Anyway, the other thing that's relevant is that this is my uncle, whom I'm named after, Uncle Joe. He was captured he was a prisoner of war. He was captured 2 weeks into the war, and he was there till the end of the war, till the Germans were defeated in 1945. So he was a prisoner of war for the entire duration of the war, came back to Australia with the family, and he basically never spoke about his war experiences, which is a very common situation at the time, and he suffered inside. There were no men's sheds, there were no trauma units or anything like that, so they actually went through quite a bit of hell, particularly for his wife behind him. This chap here, we can't figure out who he is. My theory is he's just trying to get off the boat and all these damn Irishmen were in front of him blocking his way.
Protestant.
We all have a picture like that in a wedding album. I've got one of my own wedding album. 20 years later you look at it and you say, who's that guy? Standing around the keg. I thought he was with your family. Anyway, that's how it was. My father joined the RAF during the war, and he served with the RAF. He was posted to Germany, where I was born. I don't look like a German, but you know, that's it, that's how it worked out.
Sprechen Sie Deutsch?
Sorry?
Regulars in Deutsch?
No, 9.
Joe,
Nine, right.
what year was that taken?
That's
Joe?
mother, uncle, Jimmy. Now,
Joe, what year was that taken, the photo?
about 954.
54.
954, sorry, I should have said that. Now, my Uncle Paddy's the one taking the photo, I imagine. He did a lot of work with the church. You know the Carmelite situation in Minto? He did all the repair work for that, and so it's all volunteer. Himself and May never had any children, so his life was really devoted to the church in large measure. And he's going to come up a little bit later on something very interesting, and I expect none of you here would be aware of. Okay, so what's something else about that? That's the one. Yeah, so what I've given you this little family history for a very important reason. Guess what? We got off the boat, we went straight to number 88 River Road, and as we got to know the people there, we realised they were people with a very similar background to us. Right? They hadn't fought in Europe, but they had fought in Singapore and Kokoda. And there were a lot of people very similar to my Uncle Joe who came back and couldn't really cope with the trauma and the stress that they suffered. Okay. Let's move on a bit. That's Father Carr. If you haven't seen him before, he's the landlord. He came from Gort in County Clare. That's 32 kilometres from Galway, and that's where my family came from. So we knew each other very, very well. We didn't know them in Ireland, but we probably would have met them at some point. So if you have to look at the map, Gort, you have to go through my father's village, which is Kilfenora, and then you go to Galway, which is 32 kilometres the other way, the other side. And if you've been to Ireland, you'll know that all that area is linked. And my grandfather was an itinerant carpenter, and he would move around where the work was. So he would have been to Gort and other places like that. 8 shillings a week rent. 8 shillings a week rent. You try getting a place for that rent now. 8 shillings a week rent.
So the church owned that land where your shop was?
Sorry?
So the church owned the land where your shop was?
The church owned the land, owned the land that
And the
we were
butchers
on.
and all that?
Sorry?
And the butcher shop?
And the butcher shop,
They owned the whole lot?
they own the whole lot. They own the whole lot. Now, as an Irish priest coming out, he relied on the Irish connections. Because he would say, we need to build a church, and all the Irish at least, they weren't the only ones who built the church, but the Irish you could be sure they'd do it for free in their spare time. Yeah. So he picked a lot of parishioners to donate their labour skills when the building work began. Yeah, that's the way it worked.
I remember my mother complaining that all his sermon was about you've got to give more money.
Getting the money. We'll go on to that. Yeah. Now, pastoral care. I've got no recollection of Father Carr in a pastoral care role. To me, he was always the builder. Next time, look, he's building up a parish, has he? Oh my goodness, how are we going to pay for that? So that was his thing. Now, I've asked my sister, who's living in Belfast at the moment, for any memories she had of Father Carr. Okay, and she came up with 2 memories of Father Carr. One of them was she joined the Children Mary at the age of 7 or 8, whatever age, white, dressed in the white. She recalls at midnight on the New Year's Eve, she recalls going up to the presbytery door and knocking on the door at midnight. And the idea was partly devotional and partly a prank. The idea was that you'd wake up Father Carr, you'd get him to come out and give the first blessing to the parish for the new year. Somebody evidently thought that was a good idea. Anyway, my sister says, she gets this memory every now and again. She says, and it always stops, the memory stops after she knocks. She doesn't know what happened after that. Yeah? So, Father Carr's response has not been recorded. I don't think he would have been too happy. And the other thing she remembers is that when he retired, he turned up in Ireland where my sister was working as a hairdresser in Cork. And he walked in with a little envelope my father had given him to give to my sister. It was just $20 or something. Some little gift like that. So he walked into the hairdressing salon, gave it to her. She didn't recognise him. She had never seen him outside his clerical clothes. He was wearing civvies and he just don't recognise him. That was it. Anyway, that's that little part of it. To move on a little bit. Oh, he retired to Lahinch, County Clare, right next to the golf course. A well-earned rest, I would say. Now this is from the parish archives. You should have seen that photograph. This is the original church, which would have been just up there. The original church.
Yeah, where the old hall used to be down the bottom. Yeah.
Beansfield Street, yeah. Now I can recall being there and it was packed to the rafters. So much so that they said, hey Mike, you've got to get out. It was number 88. You know, and so we had to leave in order to build a new church, etc. What I also remember about this one was I was an altar boy. That's where I became an altar boy for the first time. I started there. And that's an interesting story because my mother appeared one day, and I was only 6 or 7, with a priest. I don't know which priest it was. He asked me, would you like to be an altar boy? And I said, no. I thought he'd said, would you like to be a naughty boy? And here's a guy dressed in black, and he's much taller than you, and you know, you give him the kind of answer that you think he wants, you know. No, I'm not an altar boy, no. Anyway, I eventually did become an altar boy, and I can remember, it's a certain thing you never forget, my first funeral. I was 7 years of age. And I can remember it was absolutely pelting down rain. It was the saddest of sad occasions because there was a woman who was weeping, uncontrollably weeping. There was Father Carr, there was myself, and maybe one other person. That was it. That was the way this poor soul departed this life, etc. So afterwards I went home and my father said, well, I better say something to him. You know, he said, tell me about death, this, that, the other. And he said, this is very sad, wasn't it? And just kind of, as a kid, it brushes off you. You know, you just take it in your stride. And from the church, it was very, very convenient because I was just next door. So if someone drops dead overnight, hey Joe, come on. we need you. We need you to do a service, yeah? Okay, I think that's all we say about that one. And the other one is very evocative. This one here.
Oh, I love this
I
one.
can relate very, very much to this.
Is this
photograph.
this here?
Yeah.
That's right. And guess
Yeah.
what? This is where I attended first class. And I remember distinctly with first class because I sat there, bored out of my brain.
In this room.
In this room. This is where I sat.
Yeah, this one was.
Thanks,
He's
Joe.
helping.
And while the camera, while we were sitting there, looking at the door, and I could see all these crates of free milk. Remember those? Which the Menzies had introduced in 1950. We all got free milk because we were all undernourished Irishmen. So we got these free milk, yeah? And it sat there in the sun and going off. So by the time I got out at 10 o'clock for play, you couldn't drink it.
Must have won.
A bit of lack of coordination there in doing this correctly. And that was a common story. Yeah. Do you remember that?
I definitely do remember that. Same classroom.
It was an interesting. Can you remember?
We did drink the warm milk.
Does anyone remember when it finished? The answer is 1973, and it was abolished by Gough Whitlam, the workers' friend, Gough Whitlam. And somebody said, a journalist wrote an article about it. He said he considers the abolition of the free milk to be the crowning achievement of the Whitlam government. Because this kid hated milk, he was forced to drink it. And people
But you
still like it.
forget, Joe, that Us kids would always buy the flavoured straws
Yes.
from the vendor shop, and that's what we
Okay.
flavour the milk with.
So in case you're wondering, kindergarten was over here. Kindergarten was on the left. This is where we are now. This was second class. Sorry, first class was in the hall at the time. What I remember about first class is we had a teacher who was a lay female teacher. Okay, she wasn't one of the nuns, and I don't suspect she'd ever taught before. Or we weren't first classes. And what I remember about her was that she was often absent from the classroom. And when we found out where she'd gone to, she was up here crying in the office of Sister Gerard, who was the principal, the head teacher, because we were just difficult kids, and in our own way. We're nice if you can get our attention, but that's a bit of a problem. Okay, so I'm not going to go back to this picture. We have to move on because it was my mess. But I want you to think of this area here. I'm going to say something to that about that level. This is where I had my first communion.
Because that's where it used to always flood.
Right there. I can remember that. I can remember that very distinctly because I was up this end of the table, right up the other end, and we were waiting for the action to happen, and they're all eating down here. They were tucking into the communion breakfast, so another example of poor coordination. Oh, and by the way, this used to be open access to Victoria Street up until quite recently. Because when we moved from 94, we moved from 88, River Road, we moved to number 86 Victoria Street, which is directly in front of the entrance to the school, the back entrance, which is now padlocked. So I assume there are reasons for that you don't want people to enter there. Okay, what this used to mean later on was I would walk through the school grounds from my house and out through the side and up onto River Road from there. So you could do that quite easily between church and convent. Yeah. So there we are. That's the 88 again. That's the current site. You can see how the fence here. It's a while before Colorbond appeared to give us a nice fence. Yeah. You can see how it lines up with the presbytery. Yeah. Not the presbytery, the convent. This is the convent at the back. Yeah. You can see how the properties line up. So the property extended quite a bit back. Yeah. And again, I can't go back to this slide because I want to move forward, but I want you particularly to look at these two windows at the top there. Right? I'll explain why later. So that's my Uncle Joe. Here we are, first communion, my grandma, my mother, etc. But it's the windows at the back that are most interesting. That's the same photograph. You can see the fashions that we dressed in. This is the Sunday best outfit. So that's one of the surprises coming back here. The people there are so much better dressed to start with, and you sing a lot better. The singing was a lot more in harmony and in tune. Yeah? That was very noticeable. Yeah? Do you remember that? Tell me what that is.
Bonfire.
Bonfire.
It's cracker night. Yeah.
Empire Day.
Oh, Empire. I never even heard of Empire Day.
Commonwealth Day. Commonwealth Day, but we knew it as Cracker Night.
Cracker night, yeah.
Cracker Night, right? That was Empire Day. And in Empire Day, this is not us, of course, but this was the kind of situation that we were in. We had the business there, and guess what? We sold the crackers. We had bungers, double bungers, sparklers, Catherine wheels, throwdowns, all these types of crackers, fireworks, yeah? And of course, that was an excuse to get at the neighbours. You'd fire bungers at them and cracker night, you know. So it was a bit of a war in some of the minor streets inside there. I particularly wanted you to see this photograph here. What's happening here?
No, bottle and they're filling something or blowing.
It's probably a penny rocket is putting into this. It costs you a penny. Put the rocket in there, you light the rocket and it takes off. So you can be your own little, have your own firework display if you like that. Now, what we used to do is we got hold of metal pipes. Yeah, and I can remember in our backyard, that's the other photograph I showed you, there was a boy called Barry Lee, and he must have been an Asian Korean background. And at that stage I had moved to St. Thomas's Christian Brothers, Lewisham, yeah? Okay? And I was in the backyard with Barry Lee and I said, hey Barry, have a look at this. With this pipe. In the pipe we put a bunger and a marble. And we light the bunger, boom! I hear a noise somewhere. I said, oh, what was that was? Okay, now it's your turn, Barry. You know, you put the marble in, I'll light it. Bang! You're going to crush no one. And what had happened, the next thing we know is all the nuns were lined up on River Road. Yeah? We had taken out the 2 windows. in the convent. We'd taken out the 2 windows, and they must have thought, this is Armageddon. The other mob have come to get us. You know, so they must have had the fear of God in their lives. Okay? And the only comment Father Carr said, he said to my father, don't you ever belt that boy? The answer was no, he didn't. Which is why I'm the charming person I am today. Anyway, so that didn't happen. I'll just move on a little bit. People and times. You recognise some of these photographs. Oh, that's an interesting one. I've got to tell you about this one. I wanted to ask you, when you were growing up in the area, did you have a strong sense of being different to the community at large? Were you aware of that problem which we've had since the First Fleet called sectarianism? Any feeling at all? I don't think it's very strong, but it was interesting. If you go out the school gate, as we used to when we were very young, you have to get past the public school. And so we cop a mouthful from St. Joseph Banks kids. Very uncomplimentary remarks about the Pope, for example. But anyway, we took all that in. Anyway, one day I was standing on the corner of Beaconsfield Street and River Road, and this guy suddenly appeared handing out leaflets, okay? And there were leaflets for Ashton Circus. And I was with a school friend named Wayne Williams, will you remember? And I said, okay. I said, when's it going to happen? Where's it going to be? And he said, right down the bottom where the police station is now, overlooking right next to the railway bridge. Yeah. So I said to Wayne, well, racing up the top to number 94, we looked down the hill, and there was the big top. They were building the circus, so finally we're going to see a circus. And that's a big thing at least, at the time we had a circus. Anyway, a week later, the word came through from Father Carr, which was that Catholics were not to attend this circus. And it was explained this was a pagan festival, which it is in origins. Okay? So, as a kid, you're a bit disappointed, but you go on with it, get on with it. Yeah? He said, however, Father Carr said, the church will provide alternative entertainment, okay, instead of a circus. Yeah? So, good, looking forward to it. We didn't get a fire-eating juggler. We didn't get a trapeze artist. We didn't get people being shot out of a human cannon or horses or anything like that. What we got was housey.
What's that, bingo?
Remember housey?
Is it bingo?
Bingo.
Bingo.
Yep.
We got bingo instead. Hang on. Could I have the jugglers, please? No, you're stuck with the housey. Anyway, it's only later I realised the true reason for this, which was that Father Carr was very astute. He realised that the parish did not have a lot of disposable income.
So they introduced the gambling.
So at the end of the fortnight, we paid fortnightly or weekly probably.
I love it.
At the end of the fortnight, if there was any money left over, he wanted it for the church.
Yep.
And I was waiting for 60 years ago. With the gongs for unfortunately. That didn't happen. This is a very common scene of the time, I think you know, Ashton Circus. And we had the general professionals. I better do some writing for this. Sorry, I'll just go into this. So the people around us were returned servicemen, often living in housing commission homes.
Was that one in the roundhouse?
Sorry?
Is that the roundhouse at Reesby?
No.
Okay.
No. None of this.
Oh, it's just the 6 o'clock swell.
We weren't considered good enough to photograph.
Yeah.
Okay.
I remember the roundhouse one.
Yeah, 6 o'clock swell.
So,
No, a bit younger.
returned servicemen, often living in housing commission homes. What percentage of housing in Reesby do you think was housing commission?
90%.
Any idea?
40.
10%, 11%. That's not very much compared to, hold on, if you know the Liverpool area, Cartwright and Miller, they were 87% housing commission. Woolloomooloo was also heavy, was 67%.
Yeah, but which time are you speaking about? Because they had the farms and everything before.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I'm
They
talking
did you
about,
after war, they did have a lot of house.
I'm talking about the 1950s and 60s,
Right.
yeah. And it's interesting that just going through the neighbourhood now, 5 or 6 homes that I have a personal link to, friends and people, they're all fibro housing commission homes. They're still there. And they haven't changed. Every other house has changed.
And double brick.
Yeah, it's very interesting. In Thorn Street, in Vaughan Avenue, a friend of ours lived, etc. Anyway, so what you learn from this little exercise, doing a bit of research, is that we have a housing crisis at the moment. It's very hard to get a house. But if they could build a housing commission home then, they can do it now. You can do it. There's less land available, but there are solutions. So if you've got the will, you can do it. Start to different topic. Where are we? Next one.
I'm so sorry, Joe.
There were migrants from Ireland, Southern Europe, and the Mediterranean, Lebanon, Yugoslavia, a few Dutch, and a few Eastern Europeans. I'm sorry if I omitted your nationality, but these are the main ones that I remembered from. So yeah, and they were mainly wharfies, traders, painters and decorators, the Tierney's, long-haul lorry drivers. Yeah, I don't recall any hedge fund managers. I don't recall any lawyers or facilitators or people like this.
Blue collar.
And we did have the dunny man and the garbo.
Remember them?
The dunny man and the garbo. They were, so we didn't have indoor toilets.
And most of the Dunny men were football players.
Yeah. So there were a mixed lot with hard institute. And I can go over that with you also. Okay. Now these are 2 books that help me understand a little bit about the times. Ron Conway was a spiritual advisor to George Pell, so he did understand the conditions that Catholics and others underwent at that time. You can tell by the title, The Great Australian Stupor, that he's dealing with alcohol, and also The Land of the Long Weekend, which is, we look forward to long weekends and holidays, etc. Okay? He's been discredited a little bit recently. It's a very early sociological survey, but why it's interesting was he pointed to one of the real problems in the parish, which was that, as I said, the men were very often damaged in the war. They came back, and that meant they struggled with parenthood. They struggled to be good parents, to provide role models for their children. Yep. And I can remember, Rod will remember this as well, we got involved with the CYO football club. And they had a coach who had played for St George Rugby League. And all the boys gravitated around this coach. We used to go there 2 or 3 nights a week, play cards. And there was a welcoming house, a loving mother and father there. And years later, when I looked at who these guys were, it was apparent none of them had a father in the house. The father was either disappeared, or they'd never known him, or the father was physically present in the house, but he wasn't a role model. He couldn't relate, he couldn't talk to his kids. And so they gravitated to this guy who could. And so that's a very interesting thing. So I mentioned the thing about sectarian feeling. Okay, so we've really dealt with that. Okay, so we'll move on a little bit. Sorry, we'll get home. The parish and the priests. He was very Irish in character. He was led by Cardinal Gilbert at the top. He was Irish, I think he went to school in Cogra, etc. And then at that time, even before his time, the previous Archbishop had made petitions to Rome, representation to Rome, to see if you could have more Irish, more Australian trained priests, instead of bringing them all out from Ireland. That was a good idea. Gilmore was in favour of that. So these are some of the priests I remember. You won't remember any. Father Stan, Father Harding, Scots Gaelic, Murphy, very Irish. Father London's Chinese, and Father Hannon.
He was at St Christopher's too, wasn't he?
Sorry?
Father Murphy was at St Christopher's as well.
Is that right?
Yes.
Yes, I didn't know that.
Yes, because he did my communion. He did my first communion.
Okay, he's very interesting.
Yes.
Another one I haven't put this, Father Gallagher, however you pronounce it, I remember him as well. I'm going to say a few things about those priests, which is the Irish, they brought with them a stubborn Irish anti-authoritarian feeling. With social injustice activists in some cases. One or two cases come to mind, I'll go into them in a minute. So Father Shannon, for example, if you came on the boat from Ireland and you have a history of fighting with landlords, English landlords, you arrive in a parish and you find one of your parishioners is being evicted because he hasn't paid his rent. Well, it's very clear whose side you're on, and I think that was the case. So the church cracked down hard on some human vices, but was very relaxed towards others, like drinking and gambling. So the church,
Irish traits.
that's very Irish, yes. That's the housey, you can see there. And this is a good one. If you see the priest having a drink or playing the pokies at the Catholic club, that gave them a bit of street credibility with the priest, because they were one of us. Yeah. Now my sister's married in Belfast to a Protestant side family, and you talk to them about this, the idea of priests drinking, anyone drinking alcohol is just a no-no, and as for gambling, that's the opposite feeling of it. Mixed marriages were disapproved of. There probably still are nowadays. I'm not sure what the policy is on that. Mixed marriages. I can remember distinctly, this is part of the sectarian feeling, my cousin Brian, who lived in Albert Street, he married a girl from Belfast. Okay, and that was reported on page 3 of the Sun newspaper, the state newspaper. And the headline was, "The Orange and the Green." The two colours, the south and the north of Ireland. That was big news. So the Sun newspaper tended to have a high Catholic readership. Now the social activism, I'll just give a couple of examples of that. Unfortunately, there aren't enough people here with the memories of it. But there was an attempt to start a credit union. Does anyone remember that? And I can remember some names of people who were involved. It was probably Father Shanahan. If you can imagine, if you're living in a housing commission home, as some people were, you couldn't get finance. No bank would lend you money. So the idea was the Catholics putting their money together and lenders, and you could trust them, etc. But it collapsed for whatever reason. So I thought somebody might know the reason for it. And some of the people in the parish, they were a hard group of people, some of them. They thought, well, of course, what do you expect? You lend money to people who can't pay it back, and you're surprised when they can't pay it back, you know. It's a bit like the subprime loan scandal in America. Anyway, that collapsed. But a much more interesting case is there was a neighbour in Wilberforce Road who had a problem with alcohol and with rent and stuff like that. Now, when his father would come into our shop on a Sunday, my mother would put Alcoholics Anonymous literature leaflet into his newspaper. She was always trying to improve the world, yeah? Okay? And one day, something blew up where the family hadn't paid their rent. The bailiffs had arrived, the police had arrived to evict the family. And there were barricades set up in Wilberforce Road, and Father Shannon was on the other side of the barricades. Father Shannon with this family, yeah? And very interesting, what happened then was, because a friend of mine from Lewisham School, he then went on to work for the Sun newspaper. He told me at a schoolboy reunion that the phone call came through from Cardinal Gilroy that this priest was never to be mentioned in the Sun again, because Gilroy was not impressed by Catholic priests, engaging in street demonstrations with people who couldn't pay their rent. This was not liberation theology, that's South America. It didn't apply in reason. Okay, and the final irony was my father wrote to me years later saying, guess what? Cardinal Gilroy has finally retired and he's moved into a nursing home or special retirement village named after him in St Mary's, I think it was. So, and guess who? Father Shanahan was in the same retirement home. So the breakfast table conversation must have been very interesting. Anyway, that's the other thing. That's the other thing. Remember SP bookmaking? We had no tab in those days, no tab. If you're a gambler, what you did was you came to our shop in number 88 or number 94 and you left some bets there and the bookmaker would come and collect them. And he lived in Vaughan Avenue, the bookmaker. He'd come around about 1 o'clock, he'd take all the money, go back to Vaughan Avenue, and all day they're on the horse racing. That was the big popular sport. And I showed you that schoolyard photo, didn't I, from the early 1940s, and I said, look for that space. It's a space just down here. And I would come in through that gate from 86 Victoria Street, walk through there, and parked. There's a car parked there, a nice new car belonging to one of the priests. He's now Father Hannon, I can give you his name. And he was there watching his car for about 4 hours, and the horse races was being broadcast from Randwick. Ken Howard's voice was coming out. And on the Saturday morning, he'd come into our shop, and he'd go up to get the newspaper, he'd look at my father and say, any nags? What kind of tips? So they were definitely people of the parish. They were one of us in every way. Okay, and you can see this is a big deal. Not too far to go. Now, you all know this house. This is in Thompson Road.
Yeah, I know. It's the original house.
Yeah. This is the Tierney house. Yeah. This is the house that Uncle Paddy owned.
I actually used to deliver milk there when I was a kid.
Yeah. And this is where many of the priests came for their downtime, to relax, to get away from these people on Wilberforce Road and go to put them into prison. So, anyway, so you had, it was a big scene. And there must have been also priests who were not Irish, who also went along there, but basically the Irish felt at home there. That's why I say it was a very Irish parish, yeah? So that's what, and even when I went to St Thomas's Lewisham, one of the teachers just off the boat was a teacher called Stephen Larkham. So he's Irish, I'm of Irish background, and he was teaching me Shakespeare. You worked that out. Anyway, he ended up at the bar. I saw him, I met him there at the bar. So even from Lewisham, he would come at the bar, because that was the place where I would say just about every Irishman who passed through Sydney would have ended up at the park at some stage. So it's a beautiful house. I've had many happy memories of it. You all know the house? Number 4.
It's still there?
Yeah.
It's still there.
It's not run down.
It's run down.
Yeah, it's run down.
What happened, of course, is that when my Uncle Paddy, the wife May died first, and Uncle Paddy never left a will himself. So our side of the family got the house, and not May's side. It was all very unfair. There was a bit of family business about that. But anyway, that always happens. Very Irish, not making a will. You're going to live forever, aren't you? You believe in God, but you're still going to die. So make your will and stop the family. Otherwise, the lawyers get it. So that's, and the other little interesting thing about the park is it's what was a very hushed up scandal at the time. There was one particular night there, one of the priests did an Irish jig too many, and he actually passed away. He passed away on the premises. And of course you wouldn't want that to get into the Sun, would you? Or the Mirror, if the Protestants are reading the Mirror, I don't know. So what happened was the body was somehow brought back to the presbytery, smuggled back in a car, in the boot of a car, and it was reported he died of a heart attack in the presbytery. Anyway, but they were good time. There's a couple more photos, and you will notice something here. This is that's my grandparents there, out from Ireland here. Can you see the person next to them? That's Father Carr.
Oh, yeah.
So there he is, looking very interested in the cake.
He's hungry. He's hungry.
Can't take his eye off the cake. Okay, and that's the family get together. It's my Uncle Joe, grandmother, the in-laws,
The violin, eh?
Jimmy, all playing the fiddle.
The fiddle.
The fiddle, and of course there's the Sydney Cayley band. Sydney Cayley band there. That's Uncle Paddy there. And so the music was a central part of their life.
Play banjos, mate.
Yeah, you bring your whole culture with you, don't you? The music is part of the scene.
Attached to the City Musicians Club.
Yeah. Okay, so there's not more. I've skipped through things because I didn't know how long. I've already exceeded the time that's been allowed.
They're packing up. Everybody's going to.
Yeah.
It's going to rain.
One last thing.
Everybody's getting out.
Takeaways. Does anyone like the family history?
Yeah. I'm on Ancestry.com. I do all that stuff.
If you're writing family history, I found such a rewarding exercise that you discover that your memories don't belong to you. That they are shared with other people. And if you have a sibling, a brother or sister who's just 2 years older than you, they share the same house as you, and they remember more than you do because they're older. And a lot of your memories are wrong. So it's no good to say, I've got it up here in my head. No, you write it down.
That's right.
Yeah.
Family tree.
Yes. And try and make it interesting. Okay?
Did you know even in family trees, everybody is related? When you go right back, somewhere, everybody is related.
Yeah, true.
And so I'm doing this for my parents as well because they put a lot of themselves into this parish and raising us here. And so we have obligation to the past. We have obligation to the dead, not just to the living.
Exactly.
Yeah. We recognise the soldiers and the rest of us, also to your own parents. I think the way Father Carr would have put it is honour thy mother and thy father, which is pretty simple, but we forget it. Okay. I think that's it. I'll thank you for your time. Oh no, I love this one. This came from the Wayside Chapel in Sydney. If we knew the full facts of a person's life, everyone would deserve a standing ovation.
Yeah, it's true.
You think of how you got here today, the decisions that were made way back there in the old country, the people left behind, all your memories, you have to start off from scratch again. Yes, that there were enormous sacrifices made, and it's your job to keep that alive. Yeah. And remember that the outstanding fact about family histories is that nobody reads them.
Is that your pizza place, Joe's Pizza?
This is a little joke about takeaways. Some for you to take home. I might go off and have a pizza now. Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Joe.
Will be Tierney's.
Thank you.
Tierney.
Very,
Tierney.
very,
Yeah.
Well done.
yeah, it's a very